Hello and welcome to episode 143 called Honest. Tony, you and I have always been honest on this podcast, and this is probably the most appropriate title that we have ever come up with, even though it's a song reference. So, before I pass it over to Tony, my name is Dr. KK, and I'm the Innovation Officer at Inago. And Tony, please introduce yourself as well as what.
Hi,
Yes.
hi everyone. I'm Tony O'Rourke. Welcome to PubShorts. Yeah, I've said this many times. One of the most important things about research publishing, scholarly publishing, is that there is integrity. There should be honesty in the process, and it kind of stands or fails on how good that honesty and integrity is. If you can't trust the literature, if you can't trust the what you're reading, you can't trust that as the basis of your science, then what possible use is it? So this article was this particular episode of PubShorts is called "Be Honest," which is named after a song by, I think she's called, the performance called Georgia Smith from 2018, and the track has a quiet plea for truthfulness, and that really fits this week's grey areas, where we examine the grey areas around research integrity, where open science signals honesty. Credit demands responsibility, and even AI-generated hallucinations slip past the gatekeepers. It's such an important topic.
Right, and we will switch right to the first topic, because it is all about research integrity, and we are talking about gray areas in research integrity. So this is the title is it's called "The Shades of Gray in Research Integrity." Researchers admit to questionable research practices that they do not perceive to be serious. So it's an original or a research article. It's an open access article on PLOS ONE. So it explores questionable research practices which are called QRPs, which is the first time. It's like a TV rating points is what I initially thought of. Among researchers in Portuguese universities, it distinguishes these QRPs, questionable research practices, from more serious misconduct like fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism, which is abbreviated as FFP. So a lot of interesting acronyms, abbreviations, initialisms. The study found that QRPs are widespread across all research fields and seniority levels in Portugal. And researchers who are younger and more prolific, more publications, who have more publications in terms of being prolific, admitted to engaging in more questionable research practices. A key finding is that researchers who perceive questionable research practices as less serious also admit to engaging in them more frequently. And the most common QRPs involve manuscript writing related tasks such as authorship issues and citation, let's say, practices or malpractices, which researchers often do not see as serious. Tony, this is the key point here: the perception of what is something that you should not do from a research integrity point of view. So the study suggests that normalization of some QRPs, as in, when you kind of as a community, you kind of okay it or brush it under the rug, that kind of a thing, it might be influenced by challenging that practice might be challenged by challenging academic environment in places like Portugal with precarious careers and funding. So the environment that the researchers find themselves in, and if you extrapolate that into the publish or perish culture, so you are trying to sort of output content, and these all sort of lead to this. And the authors finally recommend more comprehensive research integrity training and a review of performance evaluation systems that overly focus on publication metrics. So do not just look at publication metrics, engage in research integrity training, and as a community, change the environment so that these things are considered to be more important. So your thoughts on it, Tony?
Yeah, I wonder why this particular paper is focused on Portugal specifically. I'm sure Portugal is not the only country where what the arguably potentially questionable practices are being used or are considered. I suppose it does come down to this question. What's more important? What's more important for the researcher? Is it to publish as many papers as possible in the hope that some of them slip through the net, or one really, really good research paper? Now, in my view, it's the latter. But of course, in today's world, researchers, departments, institutes, faculty, universities are rewarded not largely, but to an extent, on the number of publications that they have. Which is well, it's not right anymore. It's not about volume. It's not about quantity. It's about quality. And the sooner these researchers have these research integrity drilled into them, reinforced, and apply that thinking, that philosophy in every paper that they write, then the better they're going to be, and the better the more we can trust the literature.
Right.
But I'm puzzled as to why Portugal specifically was
It's
being
basically a study
highlighted.
that was conducted in the context of Portugal. It's a research article, right? So the study methodology just simply had Portugal as a sort of filter. That's
Yeah.
it's the main thing that I took away from it is that it is that sort of perceived okayness of some questionable research practices like citation malpractice, for example, which is not okay in from the overall research context,
But
research integrity.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I mean, this goes back to pre Chat GPT and pre LLMs.
Mm-hmm.
I've given training to universities on the principles of research integrity. What the bare minimum should be for a researcher to understand when they're entering into that world of research publishing or scholarly publishing. What practices they need to apply. We'd even argued. I remember this is going back 10 years. We even argued about the need for global standards, like almost like an ISO, a DIN, some kind of global standard for research integrity that every graduate student should obtain.
Yeah, a couple of quick points. I think we might cover these stories, but I think there have been calls for decreasing the publication output in the sense that researchers want to decrease publication output because of the quality versus quantity thing. As well as, Tony, the one thing that I must reiterate is that research integrity training, we have covered stories or articles where we are aware that research integrity training is lacking in overall, but that lack is more sort of exaggerated in the global south, and that's something that we as an organization we promote in the sense we offer workshops as well as research integrity training in universities as well as on the online platforms, and something that we are very passionate about. And I just wanted to bring that to attention. Any quick response to what I just said?
Right. No, I agree with everything you said.
Right. All right, moving on to the next story, we have a peer review related story. This is from Scholarly Futures blog on Substack. A peer review needs a revolution and AI is already driving it. So as usual, such articles start with all the challenges in peer review and how AI is beginning to address some of these issues. And the article highlights that academics are receiving more peer review requests and wish for their contributions to be better acknowledged in evaluation. So researcher sort of recognition, peer reviewer recognition, as well as maybe financial compensation. These are the things that are sort of being hinted at or discussed in the article. And in terms of AI, there have been so many different things. Like the things that are mentioned are the STM Integrity Hub and signals like those coming from Clear Skies, Paper Mill Alarm, and things like that. And there is also mention, Tony, of preprint servers integrating like automation, including checks through the QED. I think QED Science has a sort of a novelty check that has been integrated into Open Archive as well. And a significant portion of the researchers are already using AI in terms of their own reviewing process, primarily for writing assistance, as in the sense in the whole manuscript research manuscript creation process, and in various stages. So something that we talk about in the context of responsible AI movement as well. So despite all of this, Tony, the potential of AI, there are concerns about the impact on integrity, and many researchers are uncomfortable with AI being used in peer review. And we too have in many episodes, or maybe most of the episodes on PubShorts, we have discussed that peer review in terms of AI, it always has to consider the human in the center, and the AI is an assistant. AI is just a tool that the human reviewer needs to use. So in terms of such things, what are the challenges with AI? Transparency, and in terms of AI governance and guardrails and etc. So it's a sort of a whole spectrum look at where we are in the context of AI, and discusses many of the challenges that you and I have discussed in PubShorts regarding peer review and AI. So do you have any thoughts, and do you maybe you can give perspectives in terms of your conversations with publishers on peer review and AI?
I think we've said this before. You often ask me about my crystal ball and what I think of crystal ball, and this is very much one of the things I think that's part of my forecast for the next few years. That whether we like it or not, AI is going to be used increasingly within peer review. We know already, talking to publishers, that reviewers are starting to use AI within their own peer review reports, and we're developing our own platform to support the use of AI to support human peer review. Okay, there's a harsh reality,
Mm-hmm.
and the harsh reality is that very often the publisher cannot keep up with the volume of submissions that they're receiving. They can, backlogs appear, and therefore, what otherwise good science gets blocked or is slowed down from entering into the ecosystem because they're not being properly peer reviewed. So there is a role to screen content to
Mm-hmm.
allow the publishers to be able to identify those papers that look, this is just rubbish.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way we should even waste the time of the author
Uh-huh.
or the reviewer to look at this. Let's screen those papers, and you can do that efficiently or reasonably efficiently
Mm-hmm.
with a good structured peer review report that an AI will then populate.
Right.
But I also absolutely agree that if AI is going to be used within peer review, it has to be used with
Mm-hmm.
human guardrails. It has to be part of the human decision making process
Mm-hmm.
and not instead of.
Right, right. And a quick sort of thought regarding the preprint servers also integrate. I mean, the same thing that you mentioned about publishers receiving a lot of volume. We have talked about archive, clamping down on first-time submitters needing sort of, recommendations from their, from known reviewers, etc. And so all the preprint servers are also sort of facing that volume barrage and also the quality sort of screening. So what do you think of where the world is going in terms of preprint screening?
Well, it's not just preprint screening. I think there's lots of content types
Mm-hmm.
which doesn't go through the same kind of rigorous peer review process that a journal article might. I mean, a preprint you mentioned, of course, is one of those types. Things like conference papers, for
Mm-hmm.
example,
Right.
scholarly monographs don't go through the kind of same rigorous peer review process. Yet there is an assumption
Mm-hmm.
from the eye of the reader that what you see on the page is going to be true, it's going to be honest, it's going to have integrity, and if it doesn't go peer review, it doesn't go through a peer review process. That isn't always checked. So again, I think what we're going to see over the coming years is an increasing use of these sorts of tools in order to not necessarily replicate human peer review,
Mm-hmm.
but to almost emulate
Right.
human peer review and to support those content types where there isn't currently active peer review in the journal sense.
Right. I think you've moved your crystal ball to the top right shelf because you've been looking away at the top right of your screen. Well, why? Why, Tony? Anyway, so moving on to the next. Yes, there.
When I talk, I look into the far distance to sort of get inspiration. That's what it is.
Also, the crystal ball is there. So, moving on to the next story. This is interesting, and the title is interesting. Credit in research goes hand in hand with responsibility. It's sort of like a Peter Parker Spider-Man reference there. This editorial from Nature discusses the importance of credit and responsibility in research. It highlights that trust in science relies on researchers, journals, and institutions. So everybody and all of these, there's an element of transparency and the need for correcting the scientific record when errors are found. So all of these sort of play, and everybody is sort of responsible for it. And it emphasizes that while scientists deserve credit for their discoveries, authorship also entails accountability for any issues that arise. This means acknowledging errors, failed replications, and or potential data manipulation in published studies. So all of these, like in terms of the authors, need to own up. Apart from obviously, we've been talking about whether the use of AI in the context of research and manuscript creation, they should be transparent and should authors disclose it. But this goes beyond all of that in terms of admitting errors and for data related discrepancies and everything. And in terms of institutions and journals, they also share the responsibility as per this article for correcting the publication record. Tony, you are very sort of insistent on this. The process is most effective when all parties cooperate and collaborate. And COPE's updated guidelines on retraction state that authorship implies joint responsibility for research integrity, and if a retraction is due to specific authors, this should be noted if an institutional investigation confirms their responsibility. So this is the change. Earlier, institutions had to confirm the responsibility, and until that, you cannot do anything with the authorship. But this is a new sort of a thing that COPE's updated guidelines suggest. So this should mean that retraction signals and any integrity signals should be passed down to the reader or the society faster. So what do you think of it? Do you agree with this COPE's new guideline?
I think I'm a fan of everything COPE has ever generated. What COPE effectively does, the Committee on Publication Ethics, everything they recommend and they suggest makes complete sense. It's common sense. It's absolutely what you assume is already happening,
Right.
and it's not already happening. So you sometimes have to sort of state out the obvious and remind the users of the obvious for the obvious to actually take place. So no, you cannot take credit for research without being accountable for that research.
Mm.
You know, the two have to go hand in hand. Absolutely.
Right. All right. So, a couple of scholarly kitchen articles. One about reference management. Interesting. It is from somebody who has a product about reference management. This is called "Guest Post the Next Era of Reference Management." An interview with William Gunn. So, I'll just note down some of the points that William is talking about. So, William believes that the next era will be defined by more AI integration and better integration to research workflows overall, and moving beyond simple storage and organization. And there's an interesting sort of trace in terms of history as to where the desktop software from the 80s and 90s have evolved into what early 2000 and 2010s and all of that. So a lot of things. But in terms of in terms of AI and reference management, he predicts that AI will enable more advanced features like directly citing papers that support specific claims or introduce techniques. It is in the sense that AI will surface the relevant literature while the researcher is reading or writing a paper. I mean, it is close to the features that we have on Inago Read called related papers. However, he cautions that AI tools, especially for systematic reviews, must be used with care due to the potential hallucinations and inaccuracy. So he presents a sort of counterpoint in terms of what, as a researcher, you cannot trust it completely and you have to verify. And the future of reference management, he says, is likely involves richer metadata and AI's ability to extract and structure it. So metadata cleaning, clean metadata, and use the AI using it for context. Similar to Tony, a couple of episodes ago, we talked about Get FTR, linking, providing the MCP server so that the reader or the researcher who's going through can find the direct access if they have institutional access, etc. So that, he thinks, would be some of the new sort of most important things in the context of AI and reference management. So what do you have any thoughts on whatever I've shared? And I'm sure that you can share some instances of your publishers talking to you about reference management and the concern related to hallucinated references.
I certainly can talk about what publishers are asking for in terms of being able to identify good and bad references. But as listening to that paper, I was more interested in terms of where this is going to go, and how, if you're going to use this kind of like real time reference management environments, what kind of signals there are that would inform the writer, the author of the paper, whether this is a verified reference or not. Is this a good reference? Is this a trusted reference? Is this a credible reference? It's one thing, the AI generating the content, but as you say, how can you be certain it's not a hallucinated reference or a false reference, a fake reference? So if there's some way, and I don't know what that way is, I mean, maybe some kind of community-led program where references can be validated. And I'm not just talking about citation factors, citation metrics like impact factor, which is great, and Mendeley and all sorts of things. But maybe if those sorts of things can be sucked into the reference, then it might provide some measure of trust. So if someone's got an H factor, or it's got an eigen factor, or it's got a Google Scholar metric, or it's got a Scopus score, it's got an impact factor, then and it's there and it's absolutely on the screen whenever you're citing a reference, maybe it might give you a bit more trust in the paper. And if something hasn't got any of those things, then the whole metric issue goes away.
Right, Tony. One important point that I should have mentioned in my note. So he's asked a question: what advice would you give to someone building in this space, the reference management tool? And it's a very interesting answer. So he thinks that the new companies, like let's say industry companies, in this space, need to build a strong build on a strong competitive advantages because they directly interact with the research ecosystem itself. And he thinks that the smaller companies can build more robust reference management product compared to ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude. This is my understanding. That's a sort of a very sort of an interesting thing. And he thinks that industry companies, because of this moat concept that he's talking about, will be able to make more sort of robust reference management tools. So what are your thoughts on it?
I think he's right. I think the author's right. And if a small company doesn't come up, if somebody doesn't come up to disrupt the disruptors by
Right.
creating this sort of trusted model, then they eventually will themselves. Of course, they have to.
Right.
These aren't insurmountable issues. These are problems that can be resolved.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, if a small company can come in and do it, then great.
Yeah, right. All right. Moving on to the next on the last main story. It's another scholarly kitchen article. Preliminary evidence linking open science to research integrity. So open science is expected to improve research integrity because of the openness of everything being there. So whether it is actually causing it. So there are many authors for this article. They argue that like honest signaling in nature, these practices are costly and thus avoided by those with questionable research. In the sense, openness itself does not guarantee the fact that people will be sort of sharing their or the things will be research integrity wise. Okay, so they analyze data on code sharing, data sharing, and pre-registration and pre-printing from PLOS and PMC datasets. They also use Cassini data to track conference presentations. Their measure for research integrity was Clear Skies' paper mill alarm, which flags article with high similarity to paper mill content. And the study found that open science behaviors were less common in articles flagged as high risk for paper mill activity. So it's a correlation. Paper mill signals is inversely correlated with, let's say, openness, and specifically sharing new data was twice as common in legitimate articles, in the sense non-paper mill content, and presentations were 7 times common, in the sense presentation associated with the research. So the authors also emphasize that this doesn't mean open sciences causes integrity, but that these practices are hard to fake and hence act as honest signals. So do you have any thoughts on the fact that open science and research integrity have a correlation, even though they are not necessarily always, don't go hand in hand, and they're not causative, or there's no causative rule?
No, I wouldn't expect there to be either. I don't know what percentage of papers now are completely open. I'm just talking about open access rather than open science in the broader
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
But the one thing that an open access paper has in common with a paper that sits behind a firewall
Mm-hmm.
is that they've all theoretically been through a rigorous peer review process, which should pick up those issues. You don't write the paper normally thinking I'm going to publish in an open access journal and now I'm going to write my paper. What you write your paper, and then you think, what's the most appropriate home for my journal?
Mm-hmm.
And if your institution has then got a mandate where you have to publish within open access because that's the way it is, or you have some kind of agreement with a publisher whereby you can publish open access and there's no additional cost because your institution has an institutional license fee and some kind of transition agreement, then you might be inclined to publish in those journals, but not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
An author wants to find the best home for their journal, the most suitable home that talks to their community, that is going to be recognized and read and cited by their community. And if that happens to be an open access journal, fine. But the process of writing the paper, the integrity that's required to write the paper, in my mind, is or should be no different for an open or a closed access paper.
Right, and I think if I'm not mistaken, in the last edition of Journalogy, I think James questions whether such signals, even if they are like weak signals, do they are they relevant? And his argument is that if it's very weak, then that it's probably not relevant for us to use it as a metric. And I think I have a different position, in the sense that if suppose, let's say, data availability statement, right? This is what was one of the things that was discovered. And Inago Reports has a data availability statement check. So if suppose you can put these smaller, weaker signals together, it'll create a sufficiently strong signal that is easy to sort of find. And so it at least indicates that there is less chances of research integrity concerns. And for example, paper mill signals are there, but if you put all of this together, you get a much more of a sort of a comprehensive sort of a net to catch any sort of mishaps, and which would make a robust screening system. And that's sort of what I think we are trying to sort of, in terms of build and
Oh,
sort of flesh out the Inago Reports research integrity screening system. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and I think that's what we're going to see. And we're going to see more and more of that. Now, it's already happening now. Many big publishers are putting into place these large research integrity systems. Not just ours, but there are others. Other services are available, but ours is the best, clearly.
I would agree.
In order not just to save them time, but in order to pick up things that they might otherwise miss within the normal screening processes. So yeah, I think it's absolutely right. These screening tools are going to be much more common, much more frequently used, and much more available within publishers of all sizes.
Right. Tony, are you ready for quick hits now?
Yes.
Okay. With all the enthusiasm in the world, Tony says yes. So this first one, AI conferences papers contaminated by AI hallucination. So this is a study done on new IPS conference dataset, and the key finding, Tony, is that from about 51 papers, there were 100 instances of fabricated citations or and AI authored text. So lots of hallucinated references in a computer sciences conference. This is not good, is it? And we need some screening technology to find this. Thoughts, quick thoughts.
I'm horrified that, again, what sort of process, what sort of vetting process does the conference have
Hmm.
to do? I mean, it may have a vetting process, I don't know, but let's just, if it doesn't, there needs to have some kind of vetting process to be able to check, to verify, validate the papers that are being presented and the references that are being associated with that paper
Mm-hmm.
before it can be presented to the conference.
Right, right, right. It is true, and I think we need more. I mean, you've heard so many sort of requests for fabricated or hallucinated citations detectors, something that we ourselves are
Yeah,
working on.
it's
Right.
in every conversation. You ask me, you always ask me during PubShorts, one of the conversations I have with
Mm.
publishers. Well, the one that comes up like a scratched record every time is, help me to identify hallucinated references.
Yep, yep. Right, it is a need, and it will need to be made. A lot of systems need to have that. So, Tony, quickly, would you join an Ethan Mollick class to create a startup from scratch using AI? The answer, quick answer.
Um, no,
All right, but
but
Ethan,
I'm not the right person to ask that. But I would encourage others who are,
yeah.
to join the class.
Right, 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 right. So Ethan Mollick did conduct such a thing for creating sort of startups using AI for a batch of students, and he considers, and the theme is that management as AI superpower. So the AI superpower is to sort of manage various things, and it's not just to sort of execute it; it's sort of orchestrating, and that's the sort of main point here. And I think, as always, Ethan Mollick's articles give me perspectives as to how AI is sort of heading into the future, especially in the context of publishing industry, and wholeheartedly recommend reading it. Any thoughts on this? Would you also
Oh,
recommend Ethan Mollick?
I think any CEO,
Uh-huh.
any senior manager in any business needs to understand the power of AI. We talk about AI as if it's like one specific thing. It's not, as we know, it's not. It's a very broad church.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, let me just turn this off. Sorry, I should turn my notifications off. It's a very broad church.
Right.
So CEOs, senior executives need to understand how AI can transform their business, and universities that teach that in their MBA programs, and they're right to, because it can be part of their everyday work when they're
Mm.
going into the workplace.
Right, right. It also sort of remember that Ethan Mollick is the person who inspired me to explore Claude Code and things like that.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
delegation and all of that. So all of it is there. Wonderful read. And the last quick hit that we have is models that improve on their own are AI's next big thing. So I mean, we already know that large language models are not quite, let's say, machine learning models which find patterns, but the stress is that the models, we've sort of hit a sort of a wall, and the models that sort of improve on their own are the future. This is basically what it's saying, and let me just read. So this article discusses a bunch of AI models, but the recursive self-improvement a development drawing significant attention from major tech labs and startups. So this includes Google and DeepMind and all sorts of things. What do you think, as an AI teaching itself, LLMs teaching itself to improve? Do you think that is a future? I mean, you can look into your crystal ball again, Tony, and to say yes, no, yes.
Well, I suppose to an extent, I'm surprised it's not already happening. But again, where are the human guardrails? Who's validating that what the AI is teaching itself is actually correct? Where's the kind of that RLHF approach
Mm.
where you're getting feedback, human feedback into how models are improving and developing? I have no objection to the literature setting up routines to sort of better inform themselves.
Right.
But there has to be the guardrails to make sure that what's being generated is accurate.
Right,
Surely.
right, right, right. So to reinforcement learning with human supervision is what Tony talked about, RLHS, I think. And so I completely agree. This is not devoid of that. It's just that we have hit a wall, and people have talked about, whether LLMs are eventually the sort of means for us as a society or a race to achieve artificial general intelligence. So that anyway brings us to the end of episode 143. Be honest, Tony. Any thoughts on how our audience should watch all the 142 episodes, because we've been all honest always, and explain to them how AI is shaping the publishing industry as
Well,
a whole. Yeah.
let's be honest once again. There are 142 previous episodes of PubShorts which we've recorded since the last 18 months.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed these. I think I learn hopefully as much as the audience learns sometimes from these recordings. But if you want to watch all previous 142 episodes, I encourage you to go over to our PubShorts playlist on YouTube. Just search for Inago PubShorts. You will get all previous 142 episodes there. And press that like button, share it with your colleagues, leave some comments regarding the episodes, suggestions for future topics, or whether you like this episode or not. We hope you do like it. We hope you do benefit from it, because we'd love to hear from you. But it's over on the Inago playlist, PubShorts playlist on YouTube.
Right. Thank you, Tony, for that plug. And with that, we are at the end of the episode. We will see you in the next one. Bye, Tony.
See you in the next one.